I want to welcome everybody. This is our fifth and last presentation. It's designed to be a question and answer. I received only a few questions. So unless there are other questions, and we finish these ones quickly, which I can't guarantee, then I'll carry on the study that we did yesterday because we didn't finish it. In yesterday's study number 4. So question 1. So I want to ask you a question based upon the question that I received. So this is my question. Who's heard of this term? My pronunciation isn't very good. Ordo amoris. Does anybody know what that means? It's obviously Latin. You should be able to guess, even if you don't know Latin. Who wants to have a go? Ordo amoris. Oh, without cheating. Don't go on the internet, that doesn't work. So Esther's out of the story. Yes, that's the terrible. Come on. Yes, Christian? Oh, you're telling them to put their hands up. Oh, okay. No cheating, please. I will go here.
Ben, c'est ça que j'allais dire. J'allais proposer ordre pour ordo.
Alors, ordo, maybe order.
Order.
And amoris, amor. Amor.
Amor.
Love. Alors, and Paulette c'est order based upon a love.
So I'm going to put an of in between them. Order of love. So what does that mean? What does order of love mean?
Ce serait un principe à suivre, je sais pas.
Maybe a principle to follow.
What's the principle that we're going to follow?
Oui, mais quel est donc ce principe que nous devrions suivre?
The golden rule. That's good. I like that answer. Anyone else?
L'ordre inspiré par le caractère de Dieu.
Alors, order of God character.
The order of God's character. So, oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand, sorry.
Le respect des uns et des autres.
Respect one another.
Respect one another. So I want us to focus on order. What does that mean, order? Rules? Samuel? Samuel? No? Discipline?
Concept.
Concept. Oh, Robert?
Ordonné, c'est-à-dire que l'un après l'autre.
Not messy, a step a time.
Okay. Do things in order, do them properly. Yeah?
Merci. Loi.
Law,
What's the law?
Loi de Dieu.
God's law.
Okay. Clara? This will be the last one then. Oh, the second from last. But you cheated though, Esther.
Obligation.
Obligation? Go on then, Esther. We'll let you in.
Principe, ordonnance.
Principle and ordinance.
Principle and ordinance. Okay? So I'm going to suggest it means sequence. We know what sequence is? The sequence of love. So we're all familiar with this. We have 10 commandments and we split them. 4 and 6. And 4 means what? Simplistically.
God.
God,
6.
Man, human.
Human. Yeah? So we've got human. So I'll put love here. So, ordo amorous is what we understand how the 10 Commandments work. There's an order. You love God, you love humans. We might call it priority. So, this is a well-established Christian principle. We love because God loved us. As theologians have discussed this, they have used this term in very different ways. So I've given you this version. So there's another version. So we'll call this version 1. Version 2. So there's a phrase in English. I think it's in other languages too. And it's a pseudo-biblical term. Not real, pretend. Pseudo, P-S-U-D-O, I think. Yeah, pseudo. Oh yeah, pseudo. How'd you say pseudo? Okay, it's the same. No, my pronunciation. Okay, so it's a pseudo-biblical term. Anybody know what it is? No. I'll start writing. You can shout when you get it. God helps. God helps those who help themselves. Yes, yes, yes. You're familiar with that term. Okay, so there's that concept, and then the concept of, um, I call it family. Okay, so based upon those, theologians have developed this other way of understanding ordo amorous. And we spoke about this, in fact, yesterday, I think, when we spoke about church and state. So I'm assuming no one's made a connection because no one's putting their hand up. To see what this other model is. So when we speak about love in the Bible, what types of love are there? We can go with how many, if you know the number, or what types.
On a l'amour philéo,
Donc, philéo,
Hmm. Tell me
agapé.
what they mean.
agapé,
En philéo, philéo, c'est l'amour filial de père à fille, de mère à enfant.
so it's a love between the parents and the children.
Parents to children.
L'amour agapé,
Agapé,
What does that mean?
l'amour de Dieu,
God's love.
l'amour éros,
Eros,
amour charnel,
euh, charnel, attends,
mais si c'est l'amour.
c'est, yes, flesh,
Flesh.
Yes,
passion,
patient,
sensuel, sexuel,
Sex.
flesh,
yes, yes,
You don't like saying sex?
yes. Yes, you can say.
You said flesh. So the more flesh you show, the better it is.
ok,
That's
c'est ça? This is what you said?
Sorry?
And l'amitié,
Oh, there's more? Oh, there's another one. Friendship. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll do that. That's enough. So I'm just going to call this degrees of love. Different types of love. So you can see it's not exactly, but it's similar to this idea of order. Yeah? So based upon all of these, this is version 2. God helps those that help themselves. We just put family here, but I'm going to say the nuclear family. Whatever you might think that means. and then different types or degrees of love. Some are stronger than others. So based upon that, people have modeled degrees of love in this way. Concentric circles. You look in the word concentric? Yeah. In fact, it's this. Okay. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hopefully we'll be able to think of that. So it's like ripples. When you throw a stone in the pond, then you get these ripples. This is the question, by the way, someone asked me. So love. Chris?
Why not 4? Why 5?
Why not? Oh, in French? Why 4, 5 and not 4? Oh, it could be 8. I don't know what the number is. I'm just guessing. We'll see we'll see where we stop. Whatever we might get to only 3. This picture is not this picture here. So, number 1. Who is this? Not God. Claudette? You. Number 2. Family. So if you've got a family, you normally have a partner. And in the Bible, when you get a partner, 2 people become 1. So number 1 is you. Number 2 is your partner. No person hated themselves. And that means when you have a partner who then becomes you, because you're 1, you don't hate your partner. That's Paul's argument for having respect or equality in marriage. That people don't hurt themselves. We're designed to protect ourselves. And if you're one flesh, that means you would automatically protect your partner. We said family. Number 3. Children. That was easy. Number 4. So we could have different things for this. We could have friends. If we do friends, we're going to have like about 15 then. So I want to narrow it. Humanity. Someone said humanity, but that's jumping right. That'll be right at the end. So I'll say your community, and let's say your city, the place where you live, or the district, whatever you call that.
Où est-ce qu'on place l'amour de nos parents?
Where do we place the parents?
So it depends what story you're telling. Some people might put their parent in that somewhere. So I'm not trying to make a theology. I'm showing you how this model works in a simple way. But parents and friends would go somewhere too, of course. So we have city, we have state, and then 6, so you would have what? Not humanity. City, state, not church. What's that?
Les inconnus.
Unknown people.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, oops. Country. Okay with that? Go from the city to the state to the country. Any questions on that? Someone says, why country? I'm just going wider circles. Yeah? And number 7, Samuel?
Moi, je me demandais, est-ce que à partir de country, enfin du pays, est-ce qu'ils considèrent toujours que c'est de l'amour, on traite l'amour là?
Okay, he was wondering from the country point, will you consider that as love?
Yes. I understood French people love their country. I understood French people love their country. Many nations do. When we speak about love, we're talking about, let me frame it this way, practical commitment. When you earn a salary, where does all that money go? To your family or to your neighbor? Where do you prioritize things? Does that help answer that question? Good. Country, then I'll say, I'll call it others. Some people called it humanity. People outside the country. So there's this priority. You prioritize your family first. So we're going to simplify this. So number 1 is family. Number 2 is country. Because city, state, country, they're all country. And then we'll say the world. So if you take this concentric pattern of ordo amoris, let me turn it into a question, not a statement. Do you recognize this? Do you recognize that this is the political phenomena that's happening today? So this order, let's put it into a framework or a subject as an example. So let's take an example of climate change. If you believe in this model, how do you deal with climate change? How do you implement or practice climate change? How do you view it? If you follow through with this. Paulette?
Je mettrai en sécurité ma famille d'abord, je penserai au pays après.
So
et
I will
ensuite-
put in security, I will secure my family first, then the country,
and then, après, je regarderai ce qui se passe au niveau du monde.
and after I will look what's happened in the world.
So if you follow through with that, all your priorities looking after your family. So if you are wrecking the world, if you're destroying the world, it's not that you don't care. It's at the bottom of your list. So one country will say, no, the world will say, we need to limit pollution or emissions. And an individual will say, that sounds fine, but I need to take care of my family. And then the country will say, it's easy for you to another country to say, look after the world. But you will end up keeping us in poverty because we need to, say, burn coal in order to industrialize. So can we see, if you follow this model, which is happening today, what happens to the world? It gets destroyed. And the thing is, we think, oh, the world will get destroyed sometime in the future. Because we don't feel the pain. As soon as you begin to feel the pain, then you will not use this model. You'll say recycling is good. But what we tend to do, because we gravitate to this model, when the climate changes and it hurts us, we give another explanation to it. We say, this is not human-driven change, it's the normal cycle of things. So, can everybody see that at a very basic level, when it comes to climate change, which is a big issue, most human beings, most of the world, is following this model. Version 2. Prioritizing our responsibility and our commitment instead of version 1. which is very different. Okay, so we did climate change. Another one. Another current issue in the world. And let's see how that is being dealt with, version 1 or version 2. Immigration. Everybody okay with that? Okay, someone help me go through that one then. Immigration. Is immigration the way it's been practiced, version 1 or version 2?
Version 2.
Version 2. So people will say, I need to look after my family, my country, and then we'll worry about the immigrants after that. Which really means we won't worry about them at all. And so what we do is, we build a wall. And you're inside, protected. You okay with that? So we can go to lots of different political issues and see how we respond to those issues. Depending upon I call it our worldview, or our religious view, how we view love. Is everybody okay with what we've said so far? If so, this was the question that I received. So I'll just read it as it is. We are not in the context of church and state now. Talking about nationalism. So how do we consider the Vice President's visit to the Vatican? You may or may not have heard, it's quite recent. So we all know that the Vice President is, we'll call it a born-again Catholic. And you may or may not know that he is in disagreement with the Pope. The Pope does not like the administration's handling of what issue, what subject. Immigration. And one of the things that caused, that made this fight worse was that the Vice President used a theological argument to defend the administration's immigration policy. Didn't use economics or common sense, used theology. And he used a Latin term, which is really a Catholic term. As a Catholic, I believe in what? Ordo Amoris. Which version was that? 2. Then the Pope replied, hold on, I'm the theologian. I'll tell you what Ordo Amoris means. And it does not mean this, concentric circles. It means this model. You love humans. And they had this big discussion, and essentially the Pope is against the administration on this issue. So the question is about church and state, about nationalism, and the recent religious, if we can call it that, visit to the Vatican. How do we put all of that together? Who wants to have a go of helping our questioner? Too difficult? Okay, I'll start. Let's have a go together then. So, this policy here, this model, family first, country second, everyone else last. We live in a very difficult and painful world. What does that mean in reality, this model? First, second, and what do we put here? First, second. Someone said third. Someone said last. Different third answer?
Together.
I don't know what ensemble means. Together. Option.
Ou encore, on ne s'en préoccupe pas du tout.
We don't care.
We'll go with that one.
Nationaliste.
Don't care. Don't care, don't do, not interested. So it sounds reasonable, prioritizing, but the reality is that the world doesn't come third. So you have €100. So you say, we'll do €80 for the family, 15 for the country, it's your tax, say, and then you'd do 5 to help people in the world. But in our conversation about finances, we said we're living in a very difficult time period now. So if you don't have enough money in this model, who gets their money taken away from them? Number 3, the world. So you'll get 85. and they'll get 0. So you end up not having this model at all. You end up saying we have to not care about anyone else. We become insular. So it's fine to do that, except if you start using religious arguments. Because then it becomes about interpretation of how God wants us to behave. So when we introduce this idea of nationalism, this model here, family, country, and no one else. We can see that this might be called ordo amoris, but it ends up being what? Nationalism. So it's a nationalistic model that we have to take care of ourselves first. And the thing you have to ask yourself, have a hard look at how you think. Because I would suggest most of you would say this is common sense. Can't have all these people coming into our country. Most of us live in this way. We live in version 2. So it's easy to look at other people and see how bad they are. Bad in your eyes. But most of you are doing exactly the same thing. So the question, church and state, nationalism, and this visit. So that visit was just for show. It's normal. And they all pretended to be cordial and polite to one another, and be friends. But they see things very differently. And when you look at the administration, it might appear to be church and state, but that church bit, just using this example, is really nationalism. It's nationalism cloaked with a religious garment. And the Pope is saying, and you have to decide if the Pope is right or wrong, this is not what God wants. This is not the model of how the world should live by. We're all humans. And this idea of prioritizing is inherently wrong. It's not biblical. Paulette.
Dans la quête du roi du Nord de conquérir le monde,
So, in the objective of the King of the North to conquer the world,
So, right there. So the object of the kingdom not to do what?
to conquer the, to win the world.
est-ce qu'on mettrait également qu'ils voudraient conquérir même le Vatican?
So will we include the Vatican also in this conquest of the world?
Whether or not Vatican City is going to be part of this issue or not, let me answer in this way. If all of you, or at least most of you, are familiar with this story, then you're familiar with the issue of what's going on with, I call it the law firms or the law companies. Don't know what term you use. Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody not know what I'm talking about? You don't know what I'm talking about? Okay, so forget law companies, universities. Now you know, everybody know. In America, over the last 6 weeks at least, there's been a fight between the administration and law companies. And in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's the administration and universities. Same fight. All, everybody familiar? Okay, so I'm answering the question about the Vatican. So the administration say to these companies, you will behave in a certain way or you will get hurt. So the same thing to universities. But we'll stick with the law firms because it's a clearer issue. What were the law firms thinking? Not what they said, not what they did. What were they thinking? Defend the people. The accusation is that these law firms have committed some kind of criminal activity. They were bad. What did the law firms think? I'll give you a multiple choice. Did they agree or disagree? They disagreed. In their thinking, they think they've done nothing wrong. But the administration say, if you don't agree with us, it's wrong. What did the law firms say? you know which ones I'm referring to, not their names, but not everybody, because there's different responses. What did the law firms do or say? No. They said, we will change. In their minds, they don't agree, but they're going to comply. And when you see their internal memos or emails that they send to the workers, what's their argument? They say, we're doing this to protect the company, to protect you, and to protect our clients, which is a synonym of the company. So we're protecting the company and you. Who is you? Family. Who is the company? The country. So they are now being forced to live in version 2. And if you looked at their ethos of their company, they were supposed to stand for version 1. And now they say, we still stand for version 1, but in practice, we're going to do version 2. And I think not only the Vatican, but most countries will behave the same way. They will capitulate, they'll come into obedience, they will become the slaves of the King of the North. All you need to do is apply sufficient pressure you press them where it hurts. It's like a light switch. A switch where you switch a light. Everybody who was version 1 switches to version 2. And they just mumble some things privately to themselves. So, I hope that answers question 1. Question 2. Sorry. Still on question 1, yes?
Dans cette version,
In this version,
la 2, comment on peut considérer le roi du Nord et la Chine?
in this version, how can we see King of the North and China?
Is the same nationalism? Pardon, c'est la même chose.
Quoi?
Ils sont
Both are nationalists.
Yes.
donc c'est pour ça qu'on voit cette confrontation entre les deux.
Is it why we saw this fight between China and Trump administration?
Yes. But up to this moment, up to today, the way this fight is working, it's 2 nations who are using version 2, of course. And China is saying, we can't let our enemy bully us. So whilst they're following version 2, they're giving this illusion that they're actually protecting us using version 1. So they're saying to the world, we're going to protect you by defending ourselves. Whether you agree with them or not, you have to decide for yourself. Yep.
Mais qu'en est-il de nous? Parce qu'il parle du cabinet d'avocats, vous n'entendez pas?
So, but what about us? You are talking about the law firm? Law firm?
Mais qu'en est-il d'associations, de ministères comme nous?
But how about us, association, ministries,
Qui pourraient être touchés aussi?
that can be touched by that?
That's why I said earlier, it's very easy to point the finger, but most of us live that way. We live in this framework of protecting ourselves and prioritizing our families before others. This tension that all humans experience maybe we would call it our human nature. Maybe we might call it a flaw. I don't want to call it a defect, but a flaw in our human nature, a weakness. This desire to help others, self-sacrificial work, the Good Samaritan is always in tension, with another drive of self-protection. And that, I'll call it the weakness in human nature, is what's being exploited to fulfill the prophecy of at least verse 41 and verse 42. Specifically, but others. It's this Satan understands how we are constructed. And when you know that, you just need to apply the right pressure in the right place, and you can make people do whatever you want. And it's when we go to extremes. Because when you have tension, the balanced way to live is to take care of people with one hand and protect yourself with the other. And it's easy for us to say, it's wrong what they're doing, but all they're doing is moving ever so gradually to an extreme. And if we can see that's what they're doing, we can see how easy it is for us to do the same thing. Because nobody goes to the other side, to the extreme left, if I call it. None of you are going to empty your bank account and give it to people. And give it to and just give it to strangers. We all protect ourselves. But what's happening now is that element of our nature is being weaponized or taken advantage of. That's why their arguments sound logical and consistent. At the same time, the result looks bad. Because we all do the same thing in our own different way. I will do Rosie because she's close, and then Clara. Because she was close.
Cela sous-entend
This means
que nous devons encore changer d'état d'esprit,
that we should change again mindset.
nos pratiques,
Pardon?
nos pratiques,
Pratique?
oui,
To practice? No pratique.
nos pratiques, changer
Ah,
notre
je croyais
manière
que-
de faire.
We are, that means that we have to change our practice. The way we experience, you do things.
Mais concrètement, cela veut dire,
But concretely, that means
quand je reçois mon salaire,
when I receive my salary,
je dois d'abord penser à l'autre
I have to think first to the other,
et après le reste, voir ce qui convient pour moi.
and the others see how for me how to spend it for me. In fact,
Et ça, c'est sur le plan économique, mais d'une manière générale, toujours placer l'autre au-dessus de moi.
so it's the example, economic example, but but in general, I have to place the other person or others first.
What humans tend to do, if they're not careful, is they start with an idea and then it becomes a philosophy, a worldview, and they convince themselves that this is the right way to behave. And once you get to that place, it's only a small step in order to get to an extreme way of thinking. It's the way our minds operate. And then someone will offer an argument to show why it's either wrong or it's going to come to a bad end. So that's why I said these two things are in tension. Because none of us are going to get to the place where we wake up on Monday morning, go to work, and all that money that we earn, we're going to give it to somebody. Nobody does that. And we have to be careful that we don't let this theory take us into that direction. In the same way, we don't let the theory take us in a different direction. That we don't give any money to anybody. So this comes back to the subject of tithe and offerings. What is reasonable? How much should you have to take care of yourself, and how much should you give to others? And in that specific context, God gives some guidelines, some rules you might say. 10% to God, if we say it that way. 10% for others. And 5% to keep the machinery working, which we call offerings. So that's an example that we get from the Bible, which shows us that God recognizes that there are these two issues. And as soon as we start going to extremes, that's when problems arise. Clara?
Je posais la question par rapport au changement climatique.
I would like to ask a question regarding the climate change.
Il est difficile de voir appliquer ce concept, le 2.
So
La
it's
version 2.
difficult to apply a version 2
Vu le changement climatique qui entraîne l'immigration.
regarding the climate change towards immigration.
Personne n'est à l'abri.
Nobody is safe.
Je dis que c'est vraiment, ça ne va pas avec la réalité des choses.
It is not going along with the reality of things.
Is there a question or was that just a comment?
C'est un commentaire
It is a commentary.
et je dis jusqu'où ça va aller, puisque l'Amérique aussi connaît ces catastrophes climatiques.
I said, how far will it go? Because USA are experienced two catastrophes.
Yes, this is what I was sort of inferring when I answered Rosie's point. And I said earlier, we have this thing, I think one of the terms that's used is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive means to do with the brain, and dissonance means to disagree. So when you see or experience things that conflict with your belief system, you tell yourself lies. Humans do that all the time, over and over again. So just because America, as an example, is experiencing climate issues, if you don't believe what the cause is, you just come to a different conclusion. Your worldview affects how you even understand what's happening. If we don't believe that, you just go to the flood, Tower of Babel, because it's the same dynamic there. Your worldview molds and shapes how you experience the world. And it's really difficult for humans to be objective. Any other points? What's the solution? Oh.
L'exemple biblique, 10% pour Dieu, 10% pour les autres, 10% pour 5% pour les offrandes, c'est la solution, une solution pour nous?
So, is
pour ne
it
pas
a
tomber.
solution for us? The biblical example, 10% for God, 10% for others, and 5% for the functioning of the machinery, as you said.
It's a little bit more complicated than that,
C'est un peu plus compliqué que cela, hein,
because in France,
en France.
the 10% that I spoke about that you give to humans,
Les 10% que vous donnez aux humains,
I think your number is like 20%,
je pense qu'en France, c'est 20%.
which you call taxes.
Ah, c'est ce que vous appelez vos taxes. Les impôts revenus.
That's why Adventism
C'est la raison pour laquelle l'adventisme
has never required what we understand is called a second tithe,
c'est pourquoi l'adventisme n'a pas demandé la deuxième dîme.
because we live under Rome.
Parce que nous vivons sous Rome
They already demand that of us,
et ils nous le demandent déjà,
that second tithe.
cette deuxième dîme.
Offerings.
Les offrandes.
I'm not trying. Those numbers I gave is straight out of Ellen White's writings. I
Et
didn't make them up.
les nombres, les chiffres que j'ai donnés, là, c'est tiré directement des écrits d'Ellen White, je ne les ai pas inventés.
My only point I was making is
Le point que je faisais,
that there's a biblical model to take care of yourself and to take care of others.
c'est qu'il y a un exemple biblique qui nous montre comment prendre soin de soi, mais également des autres.
And you know
Et vous savez,
that 10% that they gave to the poor,
et que ces 10% qu'ils donnent aux pauvres,
the only poor that you're going to give that money to
les seuls pauvres à qui vous donnerez cet argent,
is another Israelite,
c'est un autre Israélite.
because all the Gentiles are dogs.
Parce que tous les gentils sont des chiens.
So they didn't follow this rule at all.
Ils n'ont pas du tout suivi ces règles.
Move on.
On continue.
So I had another question.
J'ai une autre question. Il lui
It's
reste
about
combien de
my
temps, Maurice?
comment on AD 70. Oh. 2
C'est
minutes?
votre commentaire, c'est son commentaire. Il n'avait pas de commentaire. Ok.
Was that 2 minutes?
Yeah,
What was the two?
you already done 1 hour 13 minutes.
Oh, you just told me to stop.
Yeah, but you have 2 minutes.
Okay. So I mentioned something yesterday about AD 70 and the destruction of the temple.
J'ai mentionné quelque chose hier sur l'an 70 et la destruction du temple.
So I just want to make the point simple.
Je veux juste donner le point simple.
What I'm saying is that Israel was a church-state relationship.
Ce que j'étais en train de dire, c'est que Israël était fondé sur une relation Église-État
Which had become corrupted.
qui est devenue corrompue.
And the solution to that corruption
Et la solution à cette corruption
was to separate the church from the state.
a été de séparer l'Église de l'État.
And in a simplistic model,
Et dans un modèle simpliste,
the state was destroyed.
l'État a été détruit.
And all you had left was the church.
Ce qui est resté, c'est l'Église.
And so what God decided to do
Ce que Dieu a décidé de faire,
was that church would come under the protection,
c'est que cette Église soit sous la protection
responsibility
ou la responsabilité
of another government or state,
d'un autre gouvernement ou État,
which was pagan Rome.
la Rome païenne.
The Bible might describe it in this way,
La Bible pourrait le décrire de cette façon.
that the people were scattered,
Le peuple a été dispersé,
like Babylon.
tout comme Babylone.
Pagan Rome had its advantages and disadvantages.
La Rome païenne avait ses avantages, mais aussi ses inconvénients.
The main advantage of Rome
L'avantage principal de Rome,
when you compare it to Israel,
quand vous le comparez à Israël,
Rome was not corrupt.
Rome n'était pas corrompue.
You can't bribe people
On ne pouvait pas acheter les gens
when you go to court.
quand vous allez au tribunal.
Rome treated everybody, I'm going to say equally,
Rome traite tout le monde d'une manière égale,
like the 14th Amendment.
comme le 14e amendement.
We all have a right to be treated fairly under the law.
Nous avons tous le droit d'être traités avec justice sous la loi.
And that was no longer the case in Israel.
Et ce n'était plus le cas en Israël.
That's just one example.
Ce n'est qu'un seul exemple.
So that was the only point I was making then.
C'était le seul point que je faisais.
And then the question says, shall we apply it to our time period?
Et la personne qui pose la question dit, pouvons-nous l'appliquer à notre période?
And that bit of the question, or part 2, I'm not sure what that means.
Et je ne suis pas sûr de ce que ça signifie, cette deuxième partie.
When the question is asked, should we apply it now? In what context?
Donc quand on dit, est-ce qu'on peut l'appliquer maintenant? Dans quel contexte?
I see nowhere in inspiration or prophecy
Je ne vois nulle part dans l'inspiration la prophétie
that churches and states should come together
que l'Église et l'État doivent venir ensemble.
in AD 70, when Rome took, when Rome was in charge of the church, if I can say it that way,
En l'an 70, quand Rome était en charge de l'Église, si je peux le dire ainsi,
Rome did not go into a relationship with the church.
Rome n'est pas entré dans une relation avec l'Église.
The church was just citizens.
L'Église était juste des citoyens.
They had no relationship
Il n'y
like
avait
church-state.
aucune relation Église-État.
Takes another 300 to 500 years
Il a fallu 300 ou 500 ans
for that church-state relationship to come back together.
pour que cette relation Église-État puisse être de nouveau en place.
That's the Christianization of pagan Rome.
Et il s'agit là de la christianisation de la Rome païenne.
And what we call that is the formation of the papacy.
Et nous l'appelons la formation de la création de la papauté.
So beyond that, I'm not sure if I have answered or not answered the question.
Donc là, je ne suis pas sûr si j'ai répondu ou pas à la question.
I have a third question, but I can't answer that one now.
Donc j'ai une troisième question, mais je ne peux pas y répondre maintenant.
That wasn't deliberate.
Et ce n'était vraiment pas délibéré. Hein.
Honestly, it wasn't.
Attends,
Let's close this prayer.
on finit.
Holy God, we thank you
Dieu Saint, nous te remercions
that in observing what's happening in the world today,
en observant ce qui se passe dans le monde aujourd'hui.
we can learn about ourselves.
Nous pouvons apprendre de nous-mêmes.
We can learn about how we view things
Nous pouvons apprendre sur la manière dont nous voyons les choses,
correctly or incorrectly.
de façon correcte ou incorrecte.
May we go through these exercises
Que nous puissions faire ces exercices
in order that we might have a clearer understanding
afin d'obtenir une compréhension plus claire
of our humanity
de notre humanité
and your divinity.
et de ta divinité.
In Jesus' name,
Au nom de Jésus.
amen.
Amen.